This morning we are looking at week um, 7. And as we're looking at week 7, we're covering 3 chapters, which is a lot of material. Most of the materials, it's kind of repetitive. We're talking about retirement, leisure activities, and so forth. And so I'm just going to highlight some things from each chapter. And I know there's the PowerPoint slides as well as I believe um, there may be some articles for you guys to read as well. So there's a lot of material this time. Um, Basically, one of the main points that I feel as though these 3 chapters are kind of reiterating is a plan. And you may ask, why is it so important to plan or to think ahead when in regards to retirement? And one of the things I've taken away from these chapters is if you don't have a plan, you might be financially in a bit of a hard time once retirement comes, or you may not have the ability to retire, which that could be somewhat depressing for some people if they're unable to retire or they thought that they would be able to and then they no longer can. I mean, a person can plan as much as they would like and things just may not go their way. For example, with what happened with the economy a few years ago, people had no idea that it was going to go that way. And a lot of people lost their homes, which were possibly their retirement. And as a result, they can't retire and they have to continue to work. And that can be kind of depressing. A lot of people, I think, that are in their late 50s, 60s, that have come across that situation are looking at having to continue to work and are feeling somewhat stuck because they don't feel prepared at all if something were to happen or they would get ill and they wouldn't be allowed to work any longer. So these are some things that for you, if you're at an age where you can start to plan for retirement, it may be good to start thinking about it and setting money aside. Um, but as a clinician, what we can do to help people is to try to help them work through maybe anxiety, depression that may have developed if they are no longer allowed to retire, or if retirement isn't what they thought it would be. Oftentimes, people plan to retire and they think the idea of not doing a whole lot sounds amazing. And maybe they thought they were going to retire with more of an income than what they actually ended up with, so the traveling isn't as possible, they can't do as much, and then they're really just at home and kind of isolated because most people are working during the day. If that's the case, we can come in as therapists and really help with challenging them to get involved with leisure activities, encouraging them to maybe volunteer, maybe take on part-time work, because oftentimes when people don't have a lot to do, they tend to spend money because they feel like they need to do something. And if you're on a fixed income, that's not necessarily a good idea. So that's something to be considered is what they can get involved in and what they can do to feel like they have a purpose and a plan and how to spend their time. Maybe they thought they were going to retire with their spouse and unexpectedly their spouse died. And so as a result, they're not doing the things that they thought they were going to do in retirement. As we know, things don't always go as planned. So this is where we as clinicians can really help our clients to maybe see what they can do. Another part of this is where they live and how that may change. Oftentimes, as people get older, sometimes their homes aren't suitable for them any longer. Um, they're too big, there's too much maintenance, they can't keep up the housework. Maybe there's stairs and one of them has bad knees and they need knee replacement, so the stairs aren't practical anymore. Um, and an aging adult not necessarily can take care of all of that. Some people can, some people can't, and so there needs to be decisions that need to be made to see what is the best place for them. This can be a hard conversation. And again, if an adult hasn't thought of some of these things on their own, if an adult child is having to step in and kind of make some of these decisions, this can cause a lot of conflict and a lot of stress. And that's again where we as clinicians, our main client may be an adult child that's having to make hard decisions for an aging parent. And this is something that a lot of people are facing because a lot of families are taking care of aging adults because people are living longer and families are stepping in, and not necessarily is there always a lot of income to maybe have certain kind of living situations where you can have a 24-hour care person living with your aging parent. And so there's, retirement communities, there's retirement homes, there's convalescent care, there's sometimes respite care, which gives people a break, but there's hard decisions that have to be made. Most people have a serious attachment to their house, which makes total sense. I haven't lived in my house necessarily a long time, but I already have an attachment to it. My husband has a bigger attachment to it because a lot of his hard work has gone into taking care of that house. So we when making that decision about whether a person should stay or leave their house, that can be quite detrimental to the person because it's almost like a security blanket. And sometimes for aging adults, it's like that's their fight for their independence. And once they stop fighting, that's when they start sometimes to deteriorate. I spoke earlier about my neighbor who lives across the street from my parents, who's in her 90s and still lives independently. It's quite amazing that she's still able to do that, but it's her way of that's what's keeping her going. I don't know if she didn't have that, if she would deteriorate quite quickly. It's her fight. It's what gets her up in the morning. It keeps her busy. It keeps her motivated. She loves being in her house. And as you see in the next chapter, a lot of old people, 85 or older, there's a huge majority of them that still live at home, which is quite amazing. And it's nice that people are able to do that, but sometimes we're not. Sometimes, if say someone needs a higher level of care, they may end up having to go to, uh, let's say, convalescent care or something like that. And so, in order to afford that, the house has to be sold. Those kinds of things are quite difficult. Um, and with convalescent care, when we talk about bureaucracy, there's so much stuff that people have to deal with in order to get things taken care of. It's almost as if a person has to have nothing in order to get government aid. And so sometimes that can be difficult because the people need that income in order to live their day-to-day life. And so there's a lot of hoops people have to jump through to get services and such. And that's where, again, we as clinicians can come in. If we're knowledgeable of things, we can make referrals, we can offer support, and maybe direct clients in the right direction, especially if this is the first time they've ever dealt with an aging parent and hard decisions that they've ever had to make. Because we could make life easier for them if we know where to direct them. Um, so again, you know, as much as aging adults are going to be a huge population that will be coming into counseling, I think adult children are a huge population because the stress and the wear and tear on them being potential caregivers can definitely cause problems, not only for them personally, but on them physically. And that's where we as clinicians can maybe offer support and an outlet. Plus, not to mention, it's hard to see people who've always taken care of you to be in a reverse role and you taking care of them. It's hard seeing people you saw as being strong, maybe being weak. That's not easy for anyone. So, again, I think going back to leisure, it's important that when a person retires that they find purpose and they know what to do with their time, whether it's volunteering, getting into work again. There's a huge job market out there for part-time seniors where they can supplement their income with their retirement and maybe a part-time job, um, where they still only work about 20 hours a week, but they're still getting some income because I believe it's only 40%, or no, I'm sorry, I think it's less than that. 20% of their income is their Social Security. So that leaves a big chunk that's supposed to be something else. Social Security, you only get what you paid into it. And some people maybe were always homemakers. They don't have a lot of income. And so this can be quite difficult if that's all you have. And that's where hopefully there can be some government aid. But it can be quite difficult to get the medications that you need. Some of that was the whole issue with the healthcare reform, prescriptions and all these things. Like, it can get quite expensive for people, and then they need to eat, and then they need to pay to live somewhere, and maybe for additional care. This can be quite taxing and quite expensive. So these are just some things that, affect not only with the whole idea of retirement, you know, people look at it to be a bunch of really great years of getting to do whatever you want. Well, the reality is doing whatever you want comes with a price tag. and not everybody is prepared for that. And so how they can make good use of maybe having more free time, whether it's you're raising grandchildren or you're babysitting grandchildren, or you start volunteering something. Some of you may be exploring, maybe be in that retirement phase of your life where you're exploring a career that you finally have decided you want to do that you couldn't do because you had to take care of business with your family. And now that you don't have those responsibilities, you're able to engage in maybe becoming a therapist. That's great. Education is a great way to stay in tune with things, to keep your brain going. Like some of the things that we learned about with cognitive issues as an aging adult, this is a great way to maybe get to do your calling. A lot of older people start their own businesses once they're retired because they have the time, and maybe they don't have as much of a risk. So anyhow, those that's those chapters. I hope this is helpful for you. Like I said, there's the 3 PowerPoints you can take a look at. I appreciate all your honesty. It's been great to read your feedback on a lot of these bulletins, or the discussion boards, and just hearing your own stories. It sounds like a lot of you have had a lot of experience with aging grandparents or parents. And so I appreciate the openness and honesty and being willingness to share that with me. I've really enjoyed reading that. So keep up the hard work, and until next week, have a great day.